Good morning. Happy Friday. Good Friday. It's Friday, all right. Guys, this is, I've said this before and I've said it again, but my God, this weather is so gorgeous. This must seriously be what it's like on the West Coast in California most of the year. If I didn't love my community so much, I would entertain the idea of moving. Story time. Absolutely. I love story time. I love a great story. As you know, before, I was a teacher in my previous life and just absolutely loved anything educational related. So I thought I'd share with you a couple of maybe just stories that have happened over the last 5 years in real estate. I'll tell you, looking back, it's insane that it was 5 years in February that I became a licensed realtor. I didn't list my first place until May. Didn't close on my first property that year until June. And it didn't feel like I was a real realtor until that first closing. And I remember that first closing, it wasn't an expensive house at all. The commission I received was very small, but it was so crazy because it's when I finally felt like I was a real realtor. And then it's just kind of blown up since then. I tell people, if you're getting into real estate, you think being a realtor is quick, easy money. That is absolutely not true. My very first year in real estate, I netted negative $2,000. And why was that? Because I'm sure not everybody would have the same situation as a new realtor, especially if maybe you knew anything about real estate. When I got into real estate, I knew nothing. I knew zero about real estate. I had no one in my family that had ever been a realtor. I had no friends who were realtors. I literally knew nothing about real estate. And so I netted negative $2,000 because I believed that because I was a teacher, even though I didn't retire as a teacher, I was a teacher for 4 years, then an administrator, then a technology supervisor. So many people just thought I was still a teacher. Who would buy a house or want to sell a house with a teacher, right? That was what I thought. That was my limiting belief for sure. And so I netted negative $2,000 because I spent so much money on marketing and advertising and all the things because I wanted everybody to know that I was now in real estate. I was no longer in education. And thank God for the power of social media, because what I quickly realized was that I was wasting a whole lot of money on advertising and marketing and all the things. And really, when I figured out that the vast majority of people are on social media some way, some form, either on Facebook or on Instagram or TikTok or whatever the case may be, most people use social media somehow, some way, then I stopped spending so much money on marketing and advertising. And so that next year, I wasn't in the negative, and that's all I really wanted. And to tell you the truth, all I really wanted the first year was to make more than I had ever made in education. And so my second year in real estate, I made more than I had ever made in education. And then my next goal was to make more than I could have made as a Acadia Parish School Board Superintendent, because that was my dream. I wanted to be the Acadia Parish School Board Superintendent. That didn't happen. I was fired before that ever happened, which, oh my God, has that been a blessing. But, so my third year in real estate, I made way more than I could have ever made as a superintendent of Acadia Parish School Board. And I enjoyed every minute of it, and it wasn't a major, I'm thinking back now, oh my God, if I would have really become the superintendent, what a shit show. What a political game. All the paperwork and all the crap that goes along with it would not have been fun. I would have absolutely loved leading the parish and doing all those things, but it's all the paperwork and all the legal side of it that I would not have liked. So absolutely, that was a huge blessing. But I'm going to tell you, it has been just a whirlwind. It doesn't feel like it's been 5 years. It was 5 years in February, on February 19th. February 2019 is when I retired from the school system. And so this year in February of 2024 made 5 years, and it really feels like just yesterday that I retired from the school system. It has been so fun. It's been so rewarding. I've helped so many people. Close to 300 transactions closed. Now keep in mind that the average realtor closes between 3 and 5 transactions a year. Okay? Put that in perspective. So, it's been fun. It's been so exciting. But if you're thinking about getting into real estate because it's easy, I promise you it's not. It's a problem to solve every single day. Every single day is different. Every single day is a challenge. I love a challenge. I get bored very, very, very easy. I'm not an office person. I'm not a paperwork person. I don't like any of that. I love a challenge. I love helping people, and I love educating people. So for me, it's been amazing. But I think sometimes people think that I make it look easy. And y'all, it's not. It's not easy. It's fun. It's rewarding. It's all those things. But there's a lot of legalities that go along with it. There's lots of paperwork that go along with it. There's just lots of things in the background that you never know. So here's a story for you. I'll tell you one thing. Dealing with lots and lots and lots of different attorneys, because every single closing happens with an attorney, with a closing attorney. I've dealt with probably, I would say 50 to 100 different attorneys. They're all different. Their office situation setup is all different. The most important things for me when I'm looking for a closing attorney, or some people call a title attorney, is do they mostly, I would say 95% of the time, do they mostly handle closings? Sometimes they also do successions, because sometimes that goes hand in hand with it, but do they mostly handle closings? And that's what you need to look for when you're looking for a title attorney or a closing attorney. Because just a general practitioner attorney that does all the things, like they handle divorces, or they handle litigation, or they handle whatever. They're in court a whole lot, and they're dealing with a whole lot of paperwork. So then a lot of times that pushes back the closing. When you're dealing with an attorney that only handles closings, they can do it in their sleep. They are amazing at it, and they are very usually thorough and very efficient. And so when I'm looking for a title attorney or a closing attorney, I'm looking for someone that does it all the time. So I'm going to tell you a very funny story. So this was about 2 years ago this happened. The buyers always get to choose their title attorney or their closing attorney. The seller has no say-so. The seller might say, look, could you ask them if they can use this particular person? But ultimately, the buyers get to choose the title attorney. And so about probably 2 years ago, I was representing the sellers who had come all the way from Houston to close on a home locally. The buyers chose their uncle, who was an attorney that didn't specialize in closings. Of course, he knows how to do it. It's not very difficult. But also did all this other kinds of stuff. So it wasn't quick by any means. So needless to say, on closing day, the sellers come all the way from Houston, Texas. Actually, I think it was on the other side in the Woodlands. Came all the way for closing with the keys and with all the things, right, to hand over to the buyers. So they sign all the paperwork, and I will tell you 99% of the time at a closing, the sellers get paid that day, and they turn over the keys to the buyer, and the realtors get paid that day. 99.9% of the time, that is what happens. And so by the time this closing comes along, I'd already closed about 100 deals, okay? So I already knew how it was supposed to be. So we signed all the paperwork, okay? The sellers hadn't turned over the keys yet, and the attorney says this. Now, mind you, the sellers had come probably a 4-hour trip all the way from Houston to close. They think they're leaving with the check. The buyers think they're getting the keys and they get to move in. This was a Friday. The attorney says this. All right, so we're going to paperwork at the courthouse, and we will mail out, he's talking to the sellers, we'll mail out your checks. And he looks at me and the other attorney, the other realtor, because the realtor for the buyers is a very good friend of mine, so she's there and I'm there. He says, we will call you when your checks are ready next week, midweek next week. And okay, so remember, I had closed already 100 deals at this time, so I knew that's not how it goes. That's not the case. So he is saying we need to follow these papers at the courthouse. So I say, knowing that he's the uncle of these people, I say to the buyers, listen, were y'all planning on moving in this weekend? Because this is a Friday. The weather was probably beautiful like it is today. Perfect weekend to be moving into a house, right? And they say, oh yes, we're moving in this weekend. So I say, no, you're not. We're not exchanging keys. So I look at the attorney and say, listen, if you have to file this at the courthouse and so it's not official till we all get paid, nobody's getting keys. So he looks at me like I'm crazy, but he's really the one that's crazy. Listen, if we don't get paid and the sellers don't get paid, the buyers don't get the keys. It's simple as that. It's a fair trade. You're selling a house, you get paid, you give them the keys, right? It's only common sense. He looks at his little secretary and says, go cut the checks. Okay, thanks. Okay, so as soon as we get those checks, we're going to hand over the keys. That guy was going to have those sellers drive all the way back to Texas without the money for the house, but expected them to give the keys over to the buyers and for the buyers to move into the house over the weekend. Listen, if I had not have closed 100 deals by that time with all kinds of other closing attorneys who had never one time said, we need to go file these papers at the courthouse and then we'll disperse checks, I would not have known the difference. But I knew that the other 100 closings that I had, we had all gotten paid that day. I don't know how he files all his papers at the courthouse, but everybody got paid that day, and then keys were exchanged. That's what happens. So that's why it's so important as a buyer to choose a title attorney who, number one, is known, liked, and trusted, but who that's all they do is closings all the time. They may also do successions here and there, but their main job is closing on houses or land, closing on property. That's their main job. Okay, I'm going to leave you with one more story, and then I'm going to let you go because this has been long. I get a call, if you ever think that your credit is too terrible or that you have too many things and there's no way that you can buy a house. I kid you not. I get a call the other day, this is a couple of months ago, this is way back in November actually, from a little buyer who says to me, I am pre-qualified and I have already looked at a house with the realtor, but I want to use you as my realtor. Well, number one, if you're a buyer and you've already looked at a house with another realtor, that's your realtor. You have chosen that realtor. So if you want to use a different realtor, you need to put in writing, either as a text or an email, I am choosing to use a different realtor. You have the right to do that. You absolutely have the right to fire any realtor that you do not want to use. Listen, they're a dime a dozen. There's thousands of realtors. We are all different. We all work differently. We all have different expectations. We all have different knowledge. You do not have to stay with a realtor that you do not know, like, or trust, okay? So he says, I want to use... Okay, so, I'm back. All right, so he says he had gone and looked at the house with the listing agent, which means the person that has the house listed, the person that's representing the sellers. They had gone look at the house already. They are pre-qualified. They had already discussed with the realtor what the sale price was going to be, how much closing costs the buyer was going to pay, the seller was going to pay for the buyers, all the things. So I say, listen, you can only do that. You can only use me if you send her in writing that you do not want to use her, that you want your own representation, which is smart, because I'm telling you right now, If you're using the realtor who has the house listed, their main priority is the seller. They have listed it with the seller. They're representing the seller. Now listen, I do dual agency all the time, and I absolutely can remain neutral, but not all people can do that. So he wanted his own representation. He wanted me to represent him. So I say, send it to her in a text or an email that you want your own realtor, and then surely, then I'll take it from there. So he does. He sends her a text. He sends me a copy. She says, okay. This guy, number one, was pre-qualified. There's a difference between pre-qualification and pre-approval. Pre-qualification means you have called up a lender and you have given them all of the information verbally, but you have not provided any paperwork to them, or a very small amount of paperwork. And so they're just trusting you that everything you're telling them is true, right? So he's pre-qualified. And so I say, okay, we'll type up your offer. We type up his offer. They accept it. It goes under contract. A couple of days later, I get a call from the lender that says to me, I don't know that he's going to be able to really be pre-approved. He hasn't filed his taxes since 2018. He owes all kinds of money here and there. He makes amazing money, but is not good at saving it. Well, I say to the lender, listen to me. I have already spent 3 days with this guy who was very, very, very needy. I need you to make sure whatever you do, you get him pre-approved. You send to me pre-qualified, get him pre-approved. I don't care what it takes. Let me tell you what. It went under contract in November. We did not close on it till 2 weeks ago. So that is December, January, February, March. Because that guy had to pay the IRS for the money he owed, had to pay off some other things that he owed, had to save a whole lot of money, right? But we got it done. That was December, January, February, 4 months. It felt like an eternity. It felt like an absolute eternity. So my point is this, if your credit is awful, if you're not good at saving, if you need to buy a house, listen, when there's a will, there is an absolute way. It might not be quick. You might have to do some things that the lender recommends that you do so that you can get pre-approved. But if that guy could get pre-approved and buy a house, pretty much anybody can. Because that was crazy. How, number one, do you not file your taxes since 2018, and how are you not in prison? I would love to know that. That's 6 years of not filing taxes. That's insane. So anyway, this guy now owns a house, is very, very happy, and hopefully doesn't lose it. Hopefully learned a lesson and is better at saving and better at paying his taxes and better at all the things. I would think that's a huge life lesson to learn. Y'all have a great day. Enjoy this weather. If you need a realtor that is going to represent you either as the seller or as the buyer, I love both sides equally. If I represent you as the seller, I will absolutely give it all that I have to get you the most amount of money in the quickest time possible. And I will represent you full force. If you're the buyer, my job is to get you the absolute best price, the best deal, the best negotiation when it comes to repairs and all those kinds of things. I absolutely love it. It is what I'm great at it, and I love doing it, and I've been doing it. Probably I have closed about 300 transactions in the last 5 years. It's been amazing. Enjoy this weather. Y'all have an amazing Easter. Enjoy this Good Friday. If you are thinking about selling, I tell you what, this is an amazing time to be a seller. This is the time of the year when buyers are out, they're abundant, they're looking for things. There is absolutely never, ever enough inventory. Ever. There's not. I'm about to sell a house for some people who are going to be looking for a house in Crowley. And listen, there's not a lot to choose from. There is not a whole lot to choose from anywhere. So if you're thinking about selling, it's an amazing time. If you're thinking about buying, I absolutely will help you, but just know that if you really, really, really need to buy or have to buy, you just can't be too picky. And remember this, a lot of people believe this, especially if you're in your 20s and 30s. The house you're buying is probably not your forever home. Probably not. I mean, people in their 20s and 30s, it seems like they're buying houses every 3 to 4 to 5 years because they're never happy. It's just our society. We're never happy with what we have. If we have a small house, we want a big house. If we have a big house, we want a small house. If we're in the country, we want to be in town. We're never happy. That's just the generation we live in. So if you're looking to buy a house, I guarantee you, you're not going to live in that house for the rest of your life. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be in the absolute most perfect location. I would say it needs to be in a safe location, right? Especially if you have kids. School zones, of course, are always important. So, anyway, all those things come into play. Y'all take care. Have a great day. Reach out if you need anything. Probably, I have a listing appointment this afternoon, and that's probably the last thing I'm doing until Monday. So if you need help or need anything, or if you want to go look at houses, let me know, because even though I'm not going to be doing it, I can absolutely find somebody to go show you some houses any day. All right? Y'all take care. Bye-bye.